Next up, we have Prishti. Are you ready to go, Prishti? I'll give you the screen.
Yeah.
All right, Prishti, take it away.
All right. So this is my project. I called it the effect of racism in childbirth. I'm Prishti. My mentors were Erica Brunner and Sunny Fank for this project, but I had more in previous weeks. So first, we all took the Berkman Test to sort of see our leadership's skills and see our strengths and weaknesses and what career paths would be best for us. And I learned that my strengths primarily lie in working with people and talking to people and sort of influencing them more indirectly rather than directly. And I'm also good at being creative and sort of thinking outside the box, finding multiple solutions for one problem. And I thought that was really interesting because I feel like I had already known things like this, but seeing it like on paper was kind of cool. Um, for the principle that I chose fostering collaboration, which is basically just working together as a team to achieve something. So, like encouraging growth in everyone and just acknowledging everyone's work is a key to actually implementing this principle. And I plan on doing that through, making sure that the people that I'm working with are being like appreciated for what they do and they know what they're doing and just as well as maintaining relationships, which is another principle, but they intertwine a lot. So just, acknowledging the work of that other people have done in order to help everyone. The mentors that I had, first I had Erica Brunner, who works at UPMC, and I learned a lot about how forming relationships can be very helpful from her. You know, and networking. So how that can be very valuable in like life in general, but also in your career moving forward. If you can like have all the sort of baseline knowledge that you need for a job, but if you don't work with people, then you can't really get far in it. From Missy Paxton, I learned that it's very helpful to think outside the box and being creative when thinking about solutions. There's never just one way to fix something, and making your ideas heard. Speaking up. Don't be shy to just say idea, because the worst that can happen is that it just doesn't work out, but it can also be really helpful. And then finally, I worked with, I had Diana Linsky, who talked a lot about just change and how it can be very beneficial in your life. Without change, if you just remain stagnant, then it's not very challenging, whether it be in life or in your career. So, welcome change. It can be highly beneficial for growth, and it can also be, profitable. Uh, So my main cause for making this project was um, how racism can be very fatal in childbirth, particularly in taking care of the mother during and after childbirth. It can be a place where a lot of implicit and or explicit bias comes into play, and it is especially fatal for Black and Indigenous women. And this has led to Black and Indigenous mothers dying at a rate 6 times that of women of any other race in America. And it has led to our nation's mortality rate of mothers during childbirth, which is the rate at which they die. It's become one of the worst of any developing country. So obviously, this is a very big issue, and it's hurting a lot of women, and it needs to be addressed. And my goal for this solution, my goals for solving this problem would be just reducing the overall mortality through fighting bias in the medical community. It exists in like all facets. I feel like whether it be the emergency room or just regular checkups. but specifically focusing on childbirth, going to like medical schools and OBGYNs and making sure that people acknowledge their bias and try to work against it. Uh, so branding and marketing, mainly I was so like for the first aspect of the plan, working with medical students and professors there. So like seeing if there are any already existing groups that are interested to actually solve this, like student-led organizations, and working with them to sort of make it uh, to spread the word in universities, and then overall, like for the general public, using social media can be very helpful in just marketing and branding because it can help spread the word to a lot of people and help them acknowledge that this issue exists and not just doctors aren't the only people that need to hear this. It's also like people just in your everyday life. It can be very helpful if they know this information because it can lead to changing attitude. So my plan is just mainly education. So I talked to Erica about how like training can be about training. I know a lot of people already have to go through like unconscious bias training, but usually just having it like a one-time 2-hour training on bias doesn't really help a lot. So, doing it repeatedly, making sure people remember this after the training. So starting in medical school, there was, I believe, 3 years ago, an article where um, someone, a nurse, had a textbook, and in it had a lot of stereotypes on how people of different races and religion experience pain differently, and it had a lot of just like saying that people of like a religion that isn't Christianity experience pain as it's like some punishment and they deserve it, and you would the fact that it was only from 3 years ago is really just alarming, and so making sure that all textbooks are like uh, don't have any bias like this written in them and updating them, uh, and then informing students of this problem, especially the students that plan to go into the women's healthcare field. And then as for the existing OBGYNs and nurses that work with mothers, just training them and working with them to make them acknowledge this issue. Uh, a study can be like hospitals already record this type of data. Um, so like what mother the rate at which mothers die and like their race and their health issues and all that. So like doing a study to see if the training is like effective and how often we need to do it can be very helpful. Um, and how tech would be integrated. Again, social media can be extremely helpful in just getting the word out and helping inform people of the baseline of this, like how just impactful bias can be and how dangerous it can be, most importantly. So, you know, um, just like there are a lot of people that make sort of infographics on Instagram. So, working through those, you know, uh, having like maybe one couple posts about how this mortality rate and how like dangerous it is and how alarming it is can be pretty helpful. And then the list of people involved. So we would need to work with medical schools. So, professors, people who are in charge of writing textbooks and making sure they get to different medical schools to identify if they have like any stereotypical information or information that can cause bias in them, working with them to sort of fix that. There's also a lot of companies and people that specialize in this sort of bias training. So working with them, if they can sort of focus on this particular type of bias and make it like catering it towards people in the medical community and in this case towards OBGYNs and nurses and whoever else is involved in taking care of mothers during childbirth. And again, conducting studies to see if this training actually improves anything. Because like, for example, McGee gives birth, helps a lot of mothers give birth over like a 6-month period, even. So just seeing if training actually improves death rates or does like nothing for them, that's pretty vital. And then sort of short-term goals, just people acknowledging that this is an issue, because I don't know, I've never really like heard this being talked about on a larger scale. It was kind of like a couple articles were made like 3 years ago, and then like no one else really talks about it on a larger scale. So just people in the medical field acknowledging this issue, and medical textbooks being updated, because again, like the fact that only 3 years ago there was this there was a textbook that had like extremely inaccurate information in it is pretty concerning. And then long-term goals would be just the mortality rates improving, and a changing attitude towards racism in the medical field, because this isn't just an issue in childbirth, it's also an issue in how patients are treated when they come into the emergency room or when they get like their yearly checkup. It's an issue everywhere. And then medical textbooks being updated again, just like making sure that this happens everywhere. And then if it method for identifying if the plan has been successful. If people are just acknowledging the issue and working actively in order to prevent or to work against it, then the plan is successful. So just uh, doctors and nurses acknowledging this issue, um, people learning about it through social media. If that can happen, then I'd say that it's pretty successful. And then my hashtag was childbirth should not cost a life. I couldn't really think of anything short, uh, but I think it's pretty impactful, because we see child mothers dying during childbirth as a very old thing, like something that happened, maybe like a couple centuries ago, not anymore, but it still is common and it shouldn't be. And then for my quote, I chose an Albert Einstein quote, and it's, "The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it." And I thought that was pretty that relates to this project, since um, we like it's we can't really prevent bad stuff from happening in the world, but we just shouldn't like sit back and let it happen, because it's easier to ignore it. And yeah, that's my project.
Prishti, such an excellent job. Just so profound. I want to make sure I give Erica and Sunny time if they'd like to comment. Thank you for helping Prishti with this.
Absolutely. I was blown away at the topic, especially just, I mean, the fact that it still exists and it's still such an issue, and then to have somebody at her age, come forward and talk about it. And I just could not believe that this bias exists. I was like, we're all women. We all have the same insides. We all go through the same pain. Like, how is it because of the outside they could possibly experience something different than what I experienced? Like, poor women are in pain. They need to have the best healthcare possible. And I absolutely loved, I didn't know about her Berkman test results, what it was, but how she had said about approaching it from multiple angles, because that I was already going to point that out, that I was very impressed at the fact that she was able to, I was so passionate about it. I was like, charge, let's go do something about this. And she's like, okay, well, let's look at a couple different short-term goals. Let's talk about this and the long-term goals. Like, she did a great job of keeping me back on track and finding different angles for the solution. So I was very impressed with it. And I really hope that you continue to make noise about it. And I will be a big advocate for you with it. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Sunny, because I know Sunny got to help a lot with it too.
Well, yeah, I just filled in for you one night. That's really all, Erica. But when she talked about it, I was so, like Erica said, I was so impressed that a teenager had this, in their mind that this is a big issue and a concern that needs to be addressed because, most teenagers don't think of these things or look into these issues. So it's just completely amazing. And, I tried to give Prishti as much information as I could with my background with studies. But she did a fantastic job. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent job, Prishti. Thank you so much.